everyone, welcome back. Today we're taking a look at a video made by a content creator, Willow, over on Booktok. It became pretty controversial last year, so we're going to talk about it. So the original video is no longer up, but I did see the original before it blew up, and I actually just scrolled away because it really annoyed me. I get the rage bait of what they say right at the beginning. And it worked for me, I guess, because actually I don't know if it worked because I just scrolled away because I was just like, what the fuck is this? I feel like this is kind of along the same thread as of the discussion around the whole book bro video when a creator called out an entire group of readers and genre of books. As I said, the clip was deleted by Willow after lots of backlash, but it was widely reshared on Booktok and other social media platforms. Of course it was. Luckily for us, Books in the Night reposted the original. It is, however, sped up. Actually, I might try and slow it down if I can, because it feels like it's very fast, but if I can't slow it down, then this is it.
We all know that romantasy girlies are not the brightest sparks, and that the most popular romantasy fiction is conservative propaganda for straight women with a patriarchy kink. So, with that in mind, I wasn't particularly surprised when I realised that romantasy girlies don't like this book, this really fantastic work of romantic fantasy fiction. This is What Fury Brings by Trisha Levenseller, a fantastic piece of feminist romantasy. It's a book that flips a lot of romantasy tropes on their heads, as well as the story beats as well. It tells the story of a large, powerful princess who kidnaps a prince from a neighbouring nation. Her nation is a matriarchy and his a patriarchy. She kidnaps him with a view to marrying him in order to prove that she is the strongest between her and her cousin, who are both competing for the throne. And so many romantasy girlies are getting up in arms about this book, saying that it's not very nice seeing a man get kidnapped and abused by a woman. They don't see the hypocrisy there. And the thing that really gets me about this is the key difference between this and so many of the books that it is poking fun of and satirizing. The fact that in the Thing of Things and Things style romantasy books, so often a powerful and dangerous man kidnaps a woman who is a second-class citizen already in a patriarchal society and does with her what he will. He humiliates and abuses her. In this book, it's not just a flip of that. She doesn't take a guy off the street who is a second-class citizen in her matriarchy and does with him as she will. No. She takes a powerful prince from a patriarchal system and shows him what it's like to see the world through eyes that he's never had. In his society, for example, they don't have a word for the R word, the terrible awful thing that men do to women and other men. The narrative in this book, the themes of this book, aren't just showing us that a matriarchy would be better, but rather showing us through a matriarchy how a patriarchy is bad. But instead, so many romantasy girlies are reading What Fury Brings and going, oh, it's so uncomfortable, oh, that poor man, oh, I don't like the way he's being kidnapped and abused, oh, it's so emasculating. And yet, romantasy girlies, when it happens to a woman, suddenly it's hot. You need to think about that.
Actually, if you want a matriarchy society, you should read the Clarkanian series, because that's a matriarchy. That's great, and that's also fancy. And also monster romance. Hot alien men. Listen, I do understand the need for a hook right at the beginning of a video to get people's attention to watch. It's giving engagement farming, clickbait, that's how I feel anyway. Not to compare again to the whole book bros thing, but Annie Wilkes, who made the viral Booktok bro video, TikTok, did kind of the same thing and started off the video with, no offense to Booktok bros, but I hate your content.
No offense to Booktok bros everywhere, but I hate your content. And I stopped to think before I made that statement, am I painting with too broad a brush? And it turns out I'm not.
Basically felt like a whole group of people and potential genre were being just I don't know, they were coming for them, I guess. This feels different though. This almost feels a bit personal, obviously because I like romantasy. But to call a whole entire community of readers not the brightest of sparks. And also the difference here is that Annie went on to educate and give people good recommendations. Willow, however, just continued to shit on romantasy readers and the genre itself. So Willow Heath is actually a successful TikToker, YouTuber, and author, and they've also narrated audiobooks. And actually, I've seen their page on my feed a lot. I thought they made some great videos, some great points, but attacking fans of romantasy books, which is a genre blending fantasy with strong romance elements, just seems a bit shitty to me. I think one of the main issues was the phrase, not the brightest of sparks, for liking this genre. That kind of phrasing has widely been interpreted as insulting fans directly and dismissing their intelligence rather than productively critiquing the genre. So one of the points Willow makes as they're plugging or reviewing the book in this video is that we, and yes, the collective we, because I would also consider myself a romantasy girly, as well as a Booktok bro, a monster lover, amongst other titles. If you know, you know. Her point is basically saying that we don't read books that flip tropes on their heads, which I don't agree with. Even if you don't want to read a romantasy with tropes flipped on their heads, there are many that do. You just have to look for them. I would like to know which books they're referring to exactly. This might cement their argument, and I could perhaps understand where this hostility is coming from a little bit more. Maybe not, but maybe. There are many points made in Willow's original video, and some are very well discussed here in Bree's TikTok.
We all know that romantasy galleys are not the brightest sparks.
When Peter sent me this video, I will let you know that I audibly gasped because you have to have a lot of audacity and confidence to say something like this with a straight face. I want to touch on a lot of things, but I think the first thing that I want to touch on is that she bounces between romantasy and romantic fantasy and fantasy romance.
I wasn't particularly surprised when I realised that romantasy galleys don't like this book, this really fantastic work of romantic fantasy fiction.
Which I think that we all know that there's a very big difference in all of those. Romantic fantasy is fantasy first and then a romance subplot. Fantasy romance is romance first and it drives the plot. Okay, romantasy is 50% fantasy, 50% romantasy. To come on here and say that there's nothing going on or something like that within the brains of a romantasy reader is actually so damning, because there are so many women out there who are very, very smart, very, very talented, and they're just like, let me just read me a fun little romantasy, because they are fun. That's what they're supposed to be. Fantasy is also a great big thing where you have to kind of sit through world building, sit through this, sit through that in order for the plot to kind of make sense and move forward. And for a lot of people, it's just not their vibe. However, a lot of people do love romantasies because they get their little ounce of fantasy in there and it makes them want to read more of fantasy. It's a great gateway into fantasy. With romance by itself, you get a happy ending because there is a structure when it comes to romance. With a romantic fantasy, I think a lot of people, and I may be wrong, but I do think a lot of women are like, what comes next? Like, what are the more obstacles? We want something stronger in our romance. And so romantic fantasy or any type of fantasy, type of romance is a great way for people to get into the fantasy genre, yes, and also to experience more out of the romance. And this is where we get yearning and pining and all of that, because it's so much fun to read and you never know, will they survive at the end? Won't they survive at the end? That's the question.
And that the most popular romantasy fiction is conservative propaganda for straight women with a patriarchy kink.
I do not think the most popular romantasy is conservative propaganda. I do think dystopian romances, but that is not what we're talking about today. I did watch until the end of the video. It was more or less like a comparison type of video. She comes in saying that romantasy girlies do not have a lot going on up there. She ends with saying,
is a reading what theory brings and going, oh, it's so uncomfortable, oh, that poor man, oh, I don't like the way he's being kidnapped and abused, oh, it's so emasculating. And yet romantasy girlies, when it happens to a woman, suddenly it's hot. You need to think about that.
That is a great conversation to have started. Talk about why certain things are okay when it happens to women and not when it happens to men. How there are still a lot of women out there who baby men and who see them as up here, and so men have to be so strong and powerful, and having a man emasculated is just not a cool thing. This would have been a great conversation to start, especially around fiction, especially around romantices, and especially referring to another book, instead of attacking a targeted demographic of readers. A lot of people hear the words romance and they think that the fantasy is being dumbed down because a lot more women want to read romantasy. Is that not a good thing that a lot of women want to read? I don't think this author, who I found out is an author as well, did herself a service, because now this is going to look very bad on her writing any other type of book going forward. Romantasy girlies literally be in their own zones, okay? If you wanted to talk about why isn't there not like a ton of diversity in romantic fantasy, why there are a lot of white women who will settle for reading these books instead of reading books that have diverse characters, that could have been started around a specific book. But all she did was talk about another white author who is writing the same kind of fiction, just structuring it a little bit differently. So you decided to promote who is a very popular author, even if people like or dislike her books. Instead of making a good promotion video, you decided to attack. In my space and in my community, I do not like when other people are being attacked for what they read unless it is by a problematic author, it has problematic things, etc. But you're talking and amassing an entire genre of readers. That's not okay, boo.
This genre has inspired so many people to pick up books and read these stories. We all have our own reasons for enjoying these types of books, but to basically be called dumb for enjoying them, like I said, kind of shitty. It also feels like another thing women in particular are being demonized for enjoying. We see this time and time again, whether it's the books we read, the music we enjoy, self-care, and how to express ourselves through makeup and clothes, the kind of relationships we want, like our desires, our passions. And of all people to attack this group of mainly women, let's be honest, is also a woman. Feels a little bit like betrayal.
We all know that romantasy galleys are not the brightest spark.
Hey, so what was that? What frustrates me about this video is that it is a video about a book that actually sounds like something I would enjoy to read, but is laced with so much, like, unintentional, misogyny, and just, like, almost disgust with women who enjoy reading romantasy. This is a situation where it's like, well, she's not talking about you because you don't read those problematic romantasy books. Why are you hollering if you're not hit? Well, I'm seeing another dog get hit. I'm like, whoa, why are you hitting that dog? And again, as someone who largely and loudly critiques a lot of bad romantasy, but also enjoys so much great romantasy, seeing someone refer to romantasy girlies like that over and over again is really nasty to me. My second critique of this video is the lack of commenting on the fact that a lot of this problematic romantasy that is like straight and has like this oppressive like dynamic is written by white women. Because you talked about it being straight, conservative, but you didn't bring up the white fact, and I think that's a big part of why those books are like that. Because largely the ones with those tropes are written by what? White ladies, yes. My next note is kind of petty, but like the back and forth between you calling it romantic fiction and then calling it feminist romantasy, but also being like, the romantasy girls didn't like this. Okay, either the book is romantic fantasy or the book is romantasy. It cannot be both. And if it is romantic fantasy, then no duh, the romantasy girlies didn't like it. And if it is romantasy, then we can continue. My second to last point is the patriarchal kink thing. People can enjoy male dom and not like patriarchy. I think in the context of the books we're talking about, yes, that is they like a certain where the man is powerful and the woman is the one who's being abused and has to fight back and do all this shit. There's a lot to be critiqued there, but it's not hypocrisy that they don't like when it's a woman in charge. It is fetish. It is kink. They do not, that's why they don't enjoy it. That's why it makes them uncomfortable when it is the woman in charge, because they do not get any sexual gratification from that dynamic. And I'm saying that with someone who enjoys femdom. I wish we could, there's not enough feminist literature in the world where we can make everyone into femdom and I can get 1,000 femdom-esque, male submission-esque romantasies. I wish I could hit my woke machine and then make everyone into it, but I can't. People, you can be a feminist and into male dom. I understand that's not exactly what we're talking about because we're talking about specifically these romantasies with that dynamic. But the reason those are so popular and just in general romantasy, even outside the problematic ones, is because that is the most in heterosexual whatever blah blah blah. That is the most liked dynamic there. So it is not hypocrisy that they don't like it. Like you can't do anything about that. My last point is, who is this video for? Because again, as a dog that's not hit in this conversation, it still annoyed me. And the romantasy girls are even I don't know if you're trying to talk to them because you're like, well, they need like investigate why that made you uncomfortable. They're not watching the video. You called them dumb in the first 5 seconds. They're not finishing this video. And as someone who doesn't even like the problematic ones you're talking about, it left a bad taste in my mouth too. It pissed me off. I was annoyed. Because also I have to deal with men being so degrading towards me because I like romance books. I say I like reading. They're like, what books do you like? I'm like, oh, I like romance. They're like, oh. And now it's like, if you say you like romantasy, then it's like, ah, you like romantasy? You must be dumb. Hello? Is that not giving you a tingle of like something, I'm saying something wrong to tell millions of women, to insinuate that millions of women who enjoy a subgenre are all dumb, or majority are so dumb. We're not the brightest stars or whatever, sparks or whatever. That is misogynistic.
Now, Willow did later post an apology video. It's quite long. I may edit it down, but I also don't want to like obscure their words by editing it too much. But what I do want you to look out for is just how long it takes for Willow to actually say like sorry and apologize.
So a few days ago, I made a video on here that began with the line, "We all know that romantasy girlies are not the brightest sparks." I have since deleted that video because who wouldn't in my position, but I do have a genuine apology to make to romantasy fans, and I also want to talk about how I became so bitter and jaded. See, over the past few years, romantasy fiction has not just skyrocketed in popularity, but has dominated the literary scene. At first, based on what I'd heard about romantasy and the tropes that it explored, I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. But I was curious, and I dug around, and I read the popular stuff and the less popular stuff, and I am now a fan of romantasy fiction, by and large. I'll talk about the stuff that I do like a little bit later, but I have spent a year or two now being very critical about what I see as problematic and toxic elements in the more popular romantasy fiction. There are so many themes and elements within the more popular romantasy fiction which I consider to be very pro-patriarchal and anti-feminist, and I've been very critical about that stuff. And then Alchemized came along, and I'm not on AO3, I don't know anything about fanfiction, so I didn't know that Manacled existed. But I bought into the hype and I picked up a copy of Alchemized thinking it was going to be a really clever work of dark fantasy fiction. In actual fact, I read what I believe to be the worst novel I have ever come across in my entire life. A truly heinous work of anti-feminism, pro-patriarchy, and a really twisted abuse fantasy. Now, I am a big fan of dark, twisted, subversive books that actually challenge the reader on a moral and intellectual level. But in my opinion, that's not what Alchemized is. As I keep saying, it is anti-feminist and pro-patriarchal. And I got really upset by the fact that literally millions of readers around the world were singing the praises of a book that I considered to be so horribly toxic. Then I read an actually great work of romantic fantasy fiction, What Fury Brings by Tricia Levenseller. This is an intelligent, nuanced, challenging, subversive take on romantic fantasy fiction. I love that novel. I think it's very daring, and I also think it's pretty sexy. But I was shocked and upset and disappointed by the fact that so many romantasy fans were giving this book 1-star reviews and saying that it's problematic and toxic and has all of the issues that I think so much popular romantasy fiction has. And this is where I reached my boiling point, where I had suddenly painted in my mind a picture of what I considered to be the average romantasy fan, who of course does not exist and was just a product of my jaded bitterness. This average romantasy fan, as I saw them, was someone who would go to bat for something as twisted and awful as Alchemized and would hate on a clever work of subversive feminist fiction like What Fury Brings. And suddenly I have morphed from someone who criticizes and calls out the toxic themes in popular romantasy fiction to someone who is so jaded and twisted and bitter as to attack the fans themselves directly, and that is not okay. I said at the beginning that I have fallen in love with the romantasy genre, or at least the good stuff, like The Isle and the Silver Sea by Tasha Suri. She's a wonderful author of epic fantasy fiction, and this is a very, very politically clever work of fairy tale fantasy. The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig at first seems like a pretty rote and standard work of romantasy, but actually presents us with a strong female protagonist that we can root for and see ourselves in and be proud of and inspired by. As I film this, I'm currently reading Silvercloak, which I don't know if it's going to stick the landing. I've only read like 60 pages, but so far so good. I really like the world building and the magic system. Point is, I like the genre, or at least I like the stuff that I like, and I have really strong criticisms of the more toxic elements in the popular stuff, like The Thing of Things and Things books and Alchemized, etc. And I had become so twisted and jaded by the whole thing that I made a horrible, sweeping, generalized statement about the fans that obviously isn't true, and I'm really sorry about that. I had painted in my mind a person who doesn't exist, and I didn't like her, and that was very naive of me. And my naivety led to bitterness, toxicity on my part, generalization, and cruelty towards the fandom, and I'm sorry. And now, as a result of this, I've got people on Goodreads, right now as we speak, review bombing my collection of transgender feminist short horror stories and calling me a bitch, which, as a trans woman, is a strange kind of gender euphoria. One lovely person tracked me down on Instagram, found my partner's proposal video, and asked me, why did you delete your video, And then said, what was it? We go hard for our fantasy romance. Okay, I'm sure that these authors that you love so much would be very proud of you attacking a trans woman and her partner. So, yeah, I have genuine and passionate criticisms about the more toxic elements in romantic fantasy fiction. And I will continue to criticize the things that I don't like about the genre, hopefully in nuanced ways that people will see as reasonable, but that's up to me to present them as reasonable and nuanced and not attack fans directly, because the fans haven't done anything wrong. I have issues with art. I am supposed to be a critic of literature, and I need to continue criticizing the literature and not becoming so jaded as to attack the fans, and I'm sorry for that.
Alchemized isn't a romantasy, right? I could be wrong, I've not read it, but I'm pretty sure it's dark romance. Isn't it quite dark? Loved The Knight and the Moth. But Willow's saying it's got a protagonist we can root for, be proud of, and inspired by. There are so many romancy books like that. I'm so confused. Is this whole situation just because of Alchemized and like ACOTAR? I mean, ACOTAR does have its issues. Obviously having a problematic author also. 4.5 minutes, by the way. It's 4.5 minutes. That's how long it takes for them to say sorry for calling you all dumb bitches for like romantasy. Basically, Willow says this genre left them feeling jaded and didn't mean to call all readers dumb, but many fans feel this apology was defensive rather than genuinely apologetic. I have to say, I did think it was a good apology. I do feel like perhaps the sorry could have been like way sooner and be like, I'm sorry, like I've been jaded, and then go on to talk about like the books and the recommendations. It was like being like, you know, I'm jaded, trying to be like a bit of a cop out, here's some recommendations, and I'm sorry. It's kind of like it was like the wrong way. The issue isn't with you critiquing work. Being a critic is great, like that's great. That's not the issue. It's the fact that you called a whole book community not the brightest sparks. In fact, from the TikTok we saw of Brie and Raquel, Willow made some interesting points, but didn't further explain or explore them. Willow's original video didn't come across as informative, but rather like an attack. I, however, don't agree with the review bombing of their book, finding family members and leaving comments. It just, I don't know, that leaves a bit of a bad taste in my mouth. The comments and the generalization they made wasn't nice, but it doesn't warrant death threats or bullying.
So we got an apology video for this creator who said that romantasy readers aren't the brightest sparks, but you have to go all the way past the 4-minute mark to actually hear her say the words, "I'm sorry." Which is funny because she's also doubled down on what she said, and she said that her collection of feminist transgender horror stories is getting review bombed on Goodreads because she critically thinks of romantasy fiction in the fans and all of this stuff. And it's like, girl, if you're apologizing, then why are we putting this up?
So that says, my collection of feminist transgender horror stories is getting review bombed on Goodreads right now because I'm critical of romantasy fiction and the fans who uncritically fawn over its more toxic and problematic areas. What a nice bunch.
This is one of the most non-apology videos that I have watched in a very long time. She basically says that she just thinks really critically about all of these books, and then like when books like Alchemized become super popular and it's called romantasy, which honestly it shouldn't be in that genre anyways, but she says like, I just don't understand why people can like that stuff, so that's where this came from. She's jaded, she's bitter, and she hates that these popular books have ruined the romantasy genre. And what really made me mad was she was saying that people were hating on her because she's transgender. That is so not the case. It's because you made an overarching opinion about an entire group of people who love to read, and it was misogynistic, it was anti-feminist, and you need to actually apologize.
So what is a patriarchy kink? Patriarchy kink is a term some people use, sometimes very humorously or like tongue-in-cheek, to kind of like describe romantic fantasy stories where male dominance or conservative gender roles are central to like the fantasy story, apparently. Many readers like them as escapism, not because they want the patriarchy in real life. Now, Willow has since taken a break from the internet, and I've seen more recent videos from them discussing their mental health and how they're struggling. Listen, it was a bad take. I don't agree with what they said. I don't agree with the hatred and bullying from others towards them either. It was the same thing with like Annie Wilkes when she talked about the book bros. The way that these men were fucking coming for her, for being like, I don't like your content. It was the hook that pissed everyone off, but then she went on to give good recommendations. This again, it's the hook. I mean, there actually was more to this video that piss people off. It doesn't warrant you coming for people's families and partners. I mean, I'm pissed off, don't call me dumb. I don't know. I'm not going to attack their family or make the effort to go and find their family and their partner and leave comments. I can't even imagine. It must be horrible to be called out like that, but it was a bad take. They need to do better and learn from their mistakes, and hopefully going forward they will. Some accountability could have been taken in the apology video. We all make mistakes, we're all human. Although as someone who makes content across multiple platforms and is very much in the book space, you've got to, you've got to have known that wouldn't have gone down well. Surely. We're in an age of like clickbait, rage bait even. You know, you see it a lot with TikTok especially. Someone says something to rile you up or like pique your interest so that you continue watching. Although I do like the point that Raquel made. I was like, who the fuck is watching that video? Because like me, I literally, the minute that came out of her mouth, I was like, no thank you. I don't need all this toxic negativity in my life right now. Fuck off. Who actually watched it? Well, us now. Anyway, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Are you a romantasy girly? Join the club. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye.